Hello, everyone. Sorry that took a little bit of time there. Welcome, everyone, to Decel Group's Women in Ventures event. This is the event series where we talk about all things being a woman in venture capital. I am Myrto Lalacos. I'm the senior associate at VC Lab. So I help to run our program, helping to launch venture capital firms worldwide. I also run Venture Institute for those of you who are interested in launching a career in venture capital. This is where we kind of teach you how to make the transition. And all of these programs fall under the Decel Group umbrella, where we are building and providing everyone with an array of programs and services and tools to help you launch an ethical venture capital fund wherever in the world you may be. For any of you that are thinking of launching firms, we do have applications open for cohort 14 at the moment. So make sure you get your application in. But today, we're focused on women in venture capital. And so far, we've helped to launch hundreds of firms that have at least one woman GP in them. So overall, in our community of emerging VCs, we have 27% of all firms that have at least one female general partner or managing partner. And a lot of those firms are run fully by women as well, like our speaker today, which I'll get onto very, very shortly. We do want to do better. However, we think, 27% is better than the industry average, but it's nowhere near where we should be. And that's why we also have the Female Venture 50 initiative, where we aim to get this to 50%. And actually in cohort 10, which finished last year, we even had 40% of the whole cohort that graduated having at least one woman VC. So we are extremely, passionate by this cause. And today we have an amazing speaker with us today who has completed a VC Lab program, and she is here to talk all things related to her background and how she got into venture capital and what made her so good at what she does today. And hopefully that will inspire a lot more of you to kind of get in the space. So without further ado, I do need to make a small announcement before we get started. We have to do this for all events. So the content presented here today is not directed to any investor or potential investor and does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any securities. So thank you. And with that out of the way, Melissa, Alan, can I please have you introduce yourself to everyone here today?
Hi, everyone. And apologies for the computer issues. That's the real reason why there is a delay. It's totally my fault. I'm in a hotel. The network is super choppy. Anyways, welcome. It's so nice to meet all of you. So my name is Melissa, and I am the founding partner of the firm Capital M Ventures. And we're a Toronto-based firm in Canada, and we invest in underrepresented founders. So that's underrepresented, however a founder wants to define themselves. We invest in underrepresented founders at the pre-seed stage, with an eye towards big international markets like the US.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Melissa. And I do want to say that when I started working at VC Lab about a year and 6 months ago, you were one of the first mentors that kind of came into a session. I was so blown away and completely inspired by your story. And, first of all, I'm super excited to be doing this with you. But could you also tell everyone a little bit about, how you got into venture capital? You have a phenomenal background, and I'd love for everyone to hear your story.
Absolutely. So I started off in the corporate world. I worked for big tech. So I worked for a lot of large media companies here in Canada, as well as some small ad agencies and advertising sales. I was at Google, so I'm an ex-Googler. A great time. I worked out of the Montreal and Toronto offices. And eventually I wanted to switch up careers. I was kind of getting tired of the corporate grind, and I had a family member who was in wealth management at one of the big Canadian financial institutions. So after my last marketing gig, I decided to join this family member at this firm called Desjardins, which is known in Canada, but it's very big in Quebec. And for 5.5 years, I was a financial advisor. But I'd say about 3 years in, so this is around 2015, 2 years, or no, sorry, 3 years in, 2018, I started to get a bit antsy because while I love managing money and helping people grow their wealth, uh, I found the financial services industry to be a bit behind, a bit slow, and I really missed the dynamic atmosphere working for, even large tech companies. And so I'm like, how do I combine financial services, money management, financial stewardship with technology and experience some great upside because I do have a high risk tolerance, and also how do I really have a seat at the table for companies and startups that are designing the big next piece of technology that's going to serve all of humanity, right? How do I get a seat at that table, because there is a lot of coded bias in technology. And I thought, you know what, how about venture capital? And so I had that thought in 2018, and I started to read and do everything I can to learn about venture capital, angel investing. And I even did an accelerator because VC Lab wasn't around at the time. So I did an accelerator for women in the corporate world who want to learn how to either be angel investors or VCs. I did that, and that just completely opened up my network. It was incredible. And then from there, I decided that I wasn't going to do a direct investment in a startup because I realized pretty quickly that in order to know what a good deal looks like, you need to see like at least 300 deals, like in my opinion, probably even more. And so I was like, let me, for my first investment or my first handful of investments, just invest in funds, right? That way I can learn from fund managers and learn what they're doing, how, learn due diligence from them, and all of the, I guess, administrative detail that go into, say, investing in VC. And so I did that in 2019. I invested into my first fund. And that again opened more doors. All of a sudden now, becoming an LP, people took me a lot more seriously as an investor, right? I got to have a platform as an investor and talk about it because even back in 2019, not a lot of women, let alone women of color, were talking about investing in startups or venture capital. And so I found myself having a bit of a platform here in Canada. And then that actually led to me getting offered to help start up a startup VC fund in 2021. And I thought, okay, this is my chance to actually work full time in this industry because I realized how much I love it. And so I sold my book of business and I joined this VC firm full time. Now, that VC firm, didn't work out. They had another whole business, so they couldn't dedicate the time they needed to VC. So they put that on pause, but they encouraged me to go start a fund myself because they could see that it was really my passion. And so that around that time, because the universe works in amazing ways, I went to a webinar where my friend Brian was speaking about VC Lab and his experience in cohort 3, right? And so I was like, this is it. I have to do VC Lab because there's no way I can start this fund on my own. Like I could, but it would take a lot more money and a lot more time. And so I applied, got in, and it was an incredible 16 weeks. Like it was intense, hardcore boot camp, but like the results you put in, you'll get what you put in, you'll get out of it, right? It's so I really threw myself into cohort 4. It was incredible, and in that amount of time, and we can get into how, but I was able to close my first $1 million, and in 2022 operationalized, and I also took over leading an accelerator too. So that's the journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that with everyone, Melissa. And, you've done so much, from strategy at Google to being a financial advisor to an LP. And, I think you were very strategic about how you got into venture capital. But I think with, like you, there's a lot of people that don't come from kind of your traditional path that can lead you to be a VC. And so I just wanted to ask you, so what do you think in terms of skills that you acquired, maybe less so in terms of kind of knowledge and stuff like that, but skills that you acquired during your career that have helped you the most in being a VC? And kind of you've made a lot of investments, you're doing super well. So I'd love to kind of see where you get that from.
Well, that is such a good question, Myrto. Like, that's such a good question. And I want to preface this by saying that obviously nobody has the same background as me. Some of you might have similar backgrounds, but what I'm going to say, what I really want you to all to get out of it is that no matter what your background is, there are skills and experiences that you can pull from it to make you an amazing VC and to really hone your style as a VC, right? Each one of you have such unique, incredible experiences. So really reflect on that. Like when you go away from this call, really reflect on that and start practicing articulating and thinking to yourself how you can draw on those experiences to become a great VC. So for me, for example, I would say the three biggest skill sets I learned. Number one, people. Like you can kind of tell I'm a people person. And I am outgoing. I like being relaxed. I like making people around me feel good and 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 feeling relaxed as well. And also being there for them and being able to relate to them wherever they're at. And that aligns really well with venture capital because especially when you're at the early stages, like pre-seed and even seed, is that it really is a relationship business, right? So being able to empathize with and to relate to people, such an important skill set, right? And you don't have to be outgoing or extroverted to do that, right? But just making people even just feel heard and deepening your listening skills. That is such an important part of VC. Whether you are, courting an LP and letting them tell you more about their needs and their desires for their wealth or their own portfolio, or whether it's a founder, right, where you want to do some pre-diligence and have some conversations with them and get them to open up to you, not so that you can judge them, but so that you can find out how you can help them actually, right? So that's skill number one. Skill number two, sales. So when I was first building my book of business as a financial advisor, just because I got paid off of assets under management, sounds familiar. So to make money in the meantime, I sold life insurance policies, and uh, the company I worked for, they put me through a 5-day intensive sales training. Like literally, we were locked in a hotel for 5 days in the middle of nowhere, and 12 hours a day for those 5 days was sales training. And like I had done sales before, but it was more farming rather than hunting. Farming is like you have your clients, you have your investors, you have your buyers, and you're just nurturing that relationship and upselling, cross-selling, getting introductions. But this program taught me really how to go out there and hunt and acquire new clients, and it's step by step. It was incredible, and I would say it was just as much of a sales training as it was a personal development workshop as well. So and that skill set has lended itself really well to fundraising. It's essentially the same process, and I could go into that, but it really is. And so I never imagined one day that being able to sell life insurance door to door would be a good skill set to work in venture capital, but it is. And I would say the third piece is related to kind of relationships, but now you want to turn that to more technical expertise, and that is operations, if you will. So working for corporations, like don't underestimate that if you worked for a big corporation, what you learn there, even in terms of how to even communicate via email, how to talk to senior executives, how to talk to a junior folk, right? And me, the reason why, one of the big reasons why I even took the position I did, running an accelerator with a team of 10, was because I wanted operational experience in learning how to run an entire organization, right? From beginning to end, from marketing, from accounting, from uh, creating pro forma statements, all of that. So operations is the third skill set that I really drew on from my previous experience.
Wow, that's super cool, and it really draws a picture of how you can really, make use so many things, and it can lead you to venture capital. So that's amazing. And for everyone here, feel free to ask kind of questions that you have for Melissa in the Q&A section of AirMeet down below. Make sure you upvote them. We are doing this session a little bit different to what we've usually done, where it's kind of like an hour of us speaking with the panelists. We will stop at half past, so in about 5 minutes. So I do want to ask the most popular question to Melissa, and then what we're going to do is we're going to break to give you guys a chance to network and kind of start building links with each other. And this is all, aimed to kind of really create a community here of women who are interested in venture capital. So do put your questions in the chat, upvote them, and we'll take one, the most upvoted one, and ask it to Melissa. And okay, so Melissa, obviously, I think we could do a whole 10 hours of, problems being, women and a male dominated space and stuff like that. And we have been running some kind of focus groups with the women in the VC Lab community. We're like, okay, well, what's the kind of challenges you're facing and how'd you deal with them? And one thing that really often comes up is imposter syndrome. And I think we all get it, and we all go there. And what we got to, because I'd rather talk about solutions here and kind of things that can empower everyone. So one thing that you can do to tackle imposter syndrome is to kind of remind yourself of the advantages that you bring to the table of being a woman. And so my question to you is kind of, what is the advantage that you bring to your LPs and to your investees, by being a woman, and in your case, a woman of color as well?
So I know this is another great question. I think just by virtue of being different, that forms part of your thesis, and that forms part of the thesis of why somebody's going to invest in you, because you offer just right off the bat something completely different that separates you from other pitches they get. And I find sophisticated investors, and even people who relate to you, who you are as a person too, they see the benefit of that. Uh, and I'm laughing because last week a friend actually, I was pitching a mentor, a friend, and he got very excited about my pitch because he was like, "You are non-consensus," and what he meant by that was, my strategy, my perspective, my investment technique, and even the track record I have is outside of the norm of VC in Canada, right? And in every way, like just by me being a woman of color, a Black woman, and also how I invest. And I gave him the example of the fact that in Canada, our two biggest Canadian female success stories in entrepreneurship are two founders, like young women, say under 35, who both who had the biggest acquisitions in Canadian history. One was Nix, and the other one was Smart Sweets, and I know both of those companies really well. And so many people ignored them, didn't give them the time of day. Were like, "Oh, what's this you know, small girl doing with this candy company or bras, size inclusive underwear? What, like, nobody got it except for people who were also non-consensus thinkers. And they invested, and both of those companies had the two largest exits by Canadian females, like in our history. And I think that woke a lot of people up to the opportunities of like investing in women. And I would say even in the funnel, in the pipeline coming down, we have some more success stories like coming up. And and I remember bringing that up to this investor, and he actually had never heard of one of those companies. And when he found out, it totally blew his mind because he didn't know that like this big $360 million exit actually even happened. He hadn't heard about it. But what got him excited was that I knew about it and I'm part of that world. So I get to represent and fill his blind spots for him in the investment ecosystem. And that's what all of you are going to do in your own way. And I think that is what's going to get investors excited, especially if you can point to specific examples like that. I would say
Beautiful.
start there.
I love that so much, Melissa. Okay, can we do one question from the
Yeah,
audience
of
and you
course.
can answer
Yeah.
very briefly, and then we're gonna hop to networking. Okay, so when is the right time to jump into VC from corporate, especially considering the current VC fundraising challenges?
That is such a good question. So good. So two things in my opinion, need to happen. Number one is that you need to have a financial safety net for 2 years. Like that could be like a side part-time consulting gig. That could be a really loving, supportive spouse, no judgment, right? That could be your savings, or that could be a really flexible, understanding workspace. But either way, budget that you will need to have 2 years living expenses while you're building this fund. So I would say figure out and map out how you're going to do that and start working towards that if you haven't already. Then number two is, and I think Mike and Nadeo, they say this a lot too. I'm not sure if they still do, but they said it in my cohort. They said, go out right now. And actually, when people say, Melissa, I want to start a fund, I'm like, sounds great. Before you even get started, like think about what your thesis is, like you have a rough thesis in mind. Now go out into your immediate network, describe your thesis, and see how much you could raise, right? And however much, and so you go to, you go to your mom's friend who is like who has some money to invest, right? They're an accredited investor. Pitch them your thesis, or somebody that you know would resonate with your thesis, right? Keep doing that and see how much you can get from your immediate circle. And say if it's, you think you can get $500,000 in commitments, multiply that by 10, and then that's probably the fund size that you could raise, right? So if you feel like you can't get at least say two, three to $500,000 in soft commitments just by going to your immediate network, that either refine your thesis or work to build your network of LPs, because at the end of the day, it's going to require LPs to build your fund. And if you don't have a nice solid pipeline of 2 to 500 LPs, that's a lot, but it's true, because you're only going to close like 5% of them. Then go out there and start working on building your network.
That's amazing advice, and I love how you're kind of incorporating some financial safety in there as well, and not just, the typical just go and do it and, you'll figure it out. So
Learn from my mistakes.
that was amazing, Melissa. Thank you so much for, your kind of advice, your generosity, and your how genuine you are in your answers, and so inspired by you and your journey. So thank you for
Thank
doing
you.
this. For the audience, we hope that you enjoyed this, that you got a lot out of this. Please give a big round of applause and heart emojis to Melissa. Go follow her on LinkedIn
Mhm.
and kind of make sure that you stay tuned to her incredible journey in VC, because she's going to be doing amazing, amazing things. That's a wrap in terms of the speaking session. So I'll see you all on the other side. I will be kind of hosting a VC Lab questions table. If you guys have questions, you can find me there. But with that, once again, Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you.